have said if we had had them. But the interesting thing is, without those texts, we tend to rely upon the written word, the validation, to feel that power in our bodies. I think everyone senses or suspects that there is an untapped potential in the human body. I've been on every continent of the earth, and I've asked every audience I've ever been in, do you feel that that's there? And they say, yes. We feel there's something there, but we just can't quite get it. Why is that? So we have a feeling that there's more to us, but we rely on a written validation in a 5,000-year-old text or a scientific study to tell us that it's true. And this is, I think, the value of going into those texts, is we get to see the words that literally say, in the Gospel of Thomas, the lost Gospel of Thomas, it literally says, when these two become one, when thought and emotion become one, then you'll say to the mountain, move, and the mountain will move. And I used to think that that was a metaphor. And I now have seen enough to know that moving a cancerous tumor inside the body of a living woman, that's moving a mountain to me. And it's all done from marrying thought and emotion together. In 1998, I had my first journey into the highlands of central China and Tibet. And it was during that time we were given a personal audience with an abbot, who's an elderly leader of a particular sect in the monastery. And this abbot passed just a couple of years ago, so I'm glad that we spoke with him when we did. And it was this man, I asked the question that I asked every monk, every nun, I asked the shaman in Peru and Bolivia, that I had the clearest response from this man. And I asked him a question. I said, when we see your prayers on the outside, and we see you in the chanting hall for 12, 16, 18 hours a day, and we see the bells and the bowls and the mudras and the mantras and the gongs and the chimes and the incense, when we see your prayers on the outside, I said, what are you doing on the inside? And this was the man that looked at me. He said, you've never seen our prayers, because a prayer cannot be seen. He said, what you see are the things we do to create the feeling in our body, and the feeling is the prayer. And then he turned the question on me, and he said, how do you do this in your culture? Through a translator. And I began to think about this and realize that when we lost the words in our most cherished spiritual traditions that tell us that feeling is a language that speaks to our bodies in this world, and we lost the words that validated that, we began to think that the words themselves were the prayers, and if we say, or the affirmations, and if we say those words the right number of times, the right time of day or the right time of year, that we've said our prayer or our affirmation, and then if it doesn't work, we get frustrated and we say, well, my prayer didn't work, or my affirmation's not working for me, because we lost the link with feeling and emotion. When I was in the monasteries in Tibet, and the abbot had passed, a new abbot took his place who was already in his mid-80s. He's the new young abbot. He's already in his mid-80s. And I asked him a question. This was in 2005. We just went back. And I asked him a question, and I said, what is the force in your tradition, in your belief system? What is the force that connects the universe? What's the force that holds everything together? And through the translator, he answered me with one word. And I thought I heard it incorrectly. And I said, would you do that again? And he came back and he answered me with one word, and he said, compassion. And I said, well, wait a minute. I said, is compassion a force that holds everything together, or is it a feeling that we experience in our bodies? And he said, yes. And that was very powerful for me to understand that, because it says that we have the ability to feel in our bodies the stuff that holds this universe together. And we're really not so different from those quantum particles in the stars beyond us, or in the tumor that's in front of us, in the suffering of our loved ones, or in the peace between the nations. It's all part of the same thing. The challenge is to make it more than an intellectual exercise. How do we know we're part of all that is? One of the ways that helped me come to that realization, there was an experiment that was done in 1997